Picture yourself on Amazon, 4 Samsung SSDs in front of you, all similar prices, all sounding great. One's the flashy new Gen 5 monster, one's the newest release Samsung's advertising hard, and 2 older ones almost nobody's talking about. Pick wrong and you overpay for less speed. So let's figure out which one is actually the smart buy. Honestly, and no marketing talk, and by the end you'll know exactly which drive belongs in your machine. Step 1, the flagship, the 9100 Pro. Let's start at the top of the range with the fastest drive Samsung makes, the 9100 Pro. This is the Gen 5 monster, and on paper it is genuinely staggering. We're talking sequential reads up to 14,800 megabytes per second, roughly double what the older Pro drive does. Real quick before we go deeper, if this kind of honest, no hype breakdown is what you're here for, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It genuinely helps a small channel like this keep going. Alright, so the 9100 Pro is built for people pushing serious data, AI workloads, 8K video editing, massive file transfers. It even comes in an 8TB option, which almost no other Gen 5 drive on the market offers right now. So if you're a professional creator or you're building a no-compromise workstation, this is the one that flexes. But here's where I have to be straight with you, because this is the trap most buyers fall into. That blistering Gen 5 speed only exists if your motherboard actually has a Gen 5 slot, and even then, most people will never feel it in real life. Loading a game, opening apps, booting Windows, those tasks barely touch the ceiling of a good Gen 4 drive, let alone a Gen 5 one. So paying flagship money for numbers you'll never actually use is the single most common SSD mistake there is, and I don't want you making it. Quick gut check before we move on. Ask yourself honestly what you actually do on your PC most days, because that single answer decides which of these 4 is right for you far more than any spec number does. Think of it like buying a car that tops out at 200 miles an hour to drive it through city traffic. The capability is real, you just never get to use it. Let me put the Gen 5 thing in plain terms, because the marketing makes it sound essential and it usually isn't. Gen 5 is like having a 10-lane highway. When your daily commute has 3 cars on it, the extra lanes are real, you just have nothing to fill them with. For gaming specifically, studies and real testing show almost no meaningful difference between a good Gen 4 and a Gen 5 drive in actual load times. We're talking fractions of a second you'd need a stopwatch to catch. Where Gen 5 genuinely earns its keep is moving huge professional files, rendering big datasets, the stuff that saturates the drive for minutes at a time. If that's not your daily reality, you're paying a premium for a spec sheet, not for an experience. And there's a hidden cost people forget. Gen 5 drives run hotter and often need beefier cooling, which is one more reason they're overkill for a normal build. And here's something the spec sheets won't tell you. A huge number of gaming laptops and mainstream motherboards don't even have a Gen 5 slot yet. So for a lot of you, this drive would literally run at Gen 4 speeds anyway, meaning you'd pay flagship money and get none of the flagship benefit. So the 9100 Pro is the right call for a very specific person, the professional who moves enormous files all day. For everyone else, hold that thought, because the drives coming up next give you almost all the real-world speed for a lot less money. And stick around to the end, because one of these 4 is a drive Samsung is actively advertising right now that I'd tell most of you to walk right past, and the reason why is genuinely eye-opening. So keep that in mind, because next up is the drive that, for years, has quietly been the smart enthusiast pick. Step 2, the sweet spot, the 990 Pro. Now we get to the drive I'd call the enthusiast sweet spot, the 990 Pro. This was Samsung's flagship before the Gen 5 drive arrived. It's a Gen 4 drive, and it hits sequential reads up to 7,450 megabytes per second. Here's the key thing to understand. For gaming and everyday high-end use, that speed is more than enough. You are not leaving real performance on the table by choosing this over the Gen 5 drive. It's got a proper DRAM cache, Samsung's own controller, and it's rock solid. This is a drive that's earned its reputation over a long time on the market. And here's the part that makes it genuinely attractive right now. Because it's the previous flagship, it gets discounted constantly at retailers. So you're often getting yesterday's top-tier drive at a mid-range price, which is exactly the kind of value I love pointing you toward. Have you ever noticed how the second something newer launches, the previous best thing suddenly becomes the smart buy? That's precisely what's happened here. Let me explain why the previous flagship is so often the smart move, because it's a pattern worth recognizing across all tech. A drive like the 990 Pro didn't get worse the day the Gen 5 model launched. It's the exact same excellent drive it was before. It just lost the crown, and with it, a chunk of its price. So you're buying proven, mature hardware, the firmware is refined, the reviews are all in, the quirks are known, at a discount driven purely by there being something newer on the shelf. That's a very different thing from buying the cheapest drive on the page. This is top-tier engineering marked down. For a gaming rig or a serious everyday PC, that combination of proven quality and a lowered price is honestly hard to beat. For most serious gamers and power users, the 990 Pro is the drive that makes the most sense. Full flagship experience, no Gen 5 tax. Picture two builders, one editing 8K footage for a living, one who just wants their games to load fast, and you instantly see why the same drive isn't right for both. There's also a version with a built-in heatsink, and honestly, if your motherboard doesn't already have one, that's the one to grab. It keeps temperatures in check during long sessions without any fuss. It's also worth knowing this drive has been around long enough that its long-term reliability is well documented, which is genuinely reassuring for something that's going to hold your whole operating system and your saves. The only real question mark is whether the price gap to our next drive justifies itself, because that next one delivers nearly the same experience for noticeably less. And that's exactly where the value conversation gets really interesting. So let's talk about the drive that quietly beats its own flagship on value. Step 3, the value king, the 990 EVO Plus. Alright, this is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might just be the best value SSD Samsung sells, the 990 EVO Plus. On paper, it looks like a step down, it's DRAM-less, which usually sets off alarm bells for enthusiasts. But here's the twist that matters. In real-world use, it performs shockingly close to the far more expensive 990 Pro. We're talking sequential reads up to 7,250 megabytes per second, which is a hair behind the Pro, a difference you will basically never notice loading a game or moving files. It pulls this off using something called host memory buffer, borrowing a slice of your system RAM instead of carrying its own dedicated cache, and Samsung has tuned it so well that the trade-off is minimal for normal use. Let me put the DRAM-less worry to rest properly, because it scares people off a genuinely great drive. Yes, on paper, no dedicated cache sounds like a real downgrade, and years ago it was. But host memory buffer has matured to the point where, for the things normal people actually do, the difference is invisible. You will not feel it launching a game or opening your software. The old fear is based on old drives, and the EVO Plus is not that. Think about your actual daily use for a second. How often do you sit there transferring hundreds of gigabytes in one unbroken go? For almost everyone, the honest answer is basically never, which is exactly why the one weakness of this drive rarely ever shows its face. And now, the part that seals it, the price. This drive gets aggressively discounted. We've seen the 2TB version drop to prices that are a fraction of what you'd pay for the Pro, sometimes barely over $100 on sale. So you're getting 95% of the flagship experience for a lot less than the flagship. For the vast majority of people watching this, a regular gamer, a student, someone upgrading an aging laptop, or building a solid mainstream PC, this is genuinely the smartest drive in Samsung's entire lineup. Honestly, this is the drive I end up recommending to friends and family more than any other, because it quietly does everything most people need and keeps the money in their pocket. Let me be honest about who should skip it though, because I won't pretend it's perfect for everyone. If you do sustained heavy write workloads, like constantly moving hundreds of gigabytes at a time, the lack of a dedicated cache can show up as a slowdown once its fast buffer fills. For that specific person, the Pro's dedicated DRAM is worth the extra money. But if your life is gaming, browsing, apps, and normal file use, and that's most of us, the EVO Plus gives you the least reason to spend more. Which sets up the big question perfectly, because there's a fourth drive here, the newest one, the one Samsung's putting real marketing muscle behind, and it changes this whole picture, just not in the way you'd expect. Step 4, the new one, the plain SSD 990, and why it's the catch. Here's the drive I told you to wait for, the brand new SSD 990. And this is where I have to be completely honest with you, because Samsung's marketing sure won't be. Notice the name first. It's not a Pro, not an Evo, not an Evo Plus, just 990. Samsung calls it a balanced all-purpose Gen 4 drive for everyday use, and that flattering description is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Because here's what the reviews actually found once they tested it. It's a DRAM-less drive like the Evo Plus, but it's actually slower than the Evo Plus in real use, and it uses a slower type of memory. And its biggest weakness shows up on long transfers. Once its fast cache fills, testers watch the speed collapse to somewhere between 330 megabytes per second, which for a modern SSD is genuinely rough. But the real problem isn't the speed, it's the price. And this is the whole catch. At launch, the 990 costs about the same as drives that are flatly better. The 1TB Evo Plus, which is faster, sits just $20 away. The 1TB 990 Pro, which is much better with a real DRAM cache, is only about $50 more. And during its launch week, both the Evo Plus and the 990 Pro were actually on sale for less than the new drive in the larger sizes. So Samsung released a newer, slower, more basic drive and priced it right on top of better options they already sell. Let me say clearly what's going on here, because you deserve the straight version. This drive isn't built to be the best value. It looks like it exists mainly to fill a slot in the lineup and protect the pricing of the better drives around it. That's not me being cynical, that's what multiple independent reviewers concluded once the marketing was stripped away. Let me widen this out, because this exact move is something you'll see across the whole tech industry once you know to look for it. Companies release a product that isn't meaningfully better, give it a fresh number, and lean on the assumption that newer must mean improved. It's not lying. The drive is real and it works. It's that the framing invites you to assume value that the spec sheet doesn't back up. The honest question to always ask is simple. What does this newer thing actually do better than the cheaper option right next to it? Here, on speed, the answer is nothing. On features, the answer is nothing. And on price, the answer is also nothing. Once you strip the shine off, a newer drive that's slower and costs the same as better options isn't an upgrade, it's just newer. So when you see Samsung pushing the shiny new 990, understand that newest does not mean best here. It often means the opposite. And to be crystal clear, this isn't me saying the 990 is broken, it works fine. It's me making sure you don't overpay for it when better drives sit right beside it for the same money. And that's exactly why doing 5 minutes of homework or watching a video like this saves you real money. Because the box with the newest number on it is quietly the one to avoid. There's a real lesson buried in that naming choice too. When a company drops the Pro, Evo, and Plus labels and just gives you a bare number, that's often a quiet signal about where the product actually sits in the pecking order. So with all four finally on the table, let's pull it together into the straight recommendation. Step 5, the verdict. Which one is actually yours? Here we are, all four drives laid bare, so let me make this dead simple for you based on who you actually are. If you're a professional who moves gigantic files all day, AI work, high-end video, and you've got a Gen 5 slot to feed it, buy the 9100 Pro. It's the only one of the four built for that. And for you, the money makes sense. If you're a serious gamer or power user who wants a proven, top-tier drive and you can catch it on one of its frequent discounts, the 990 Pro is your sweet spot. Full flagship feel without the Gen 5 tax. If you're like most people watching this, a gamer, a student, someone upgrading a laptop, or building a sensible PC, the 990 Evo Plus is the smartest buy in the whole lineup, nearly the Pro's performance for a fraction of the price. And the brand new 990, the one Samsung's advertising hardest? For almost everyone, skip it, at least until it drops well below the Evo Plus, because at today's price, it's slower and more basic than drives that cost about the same. That's the honest ranking. And notice how the newest and most heavily marketed drive lands dead last for value. Whatever you pick, the fact that you sat through an honest breakdown instead of just grabbing the newest box already puts you ahead of most buyers, so give yourself some credit there. A couple of honest, open points, because I'd rather name them than fake them. SSD prices are swinging a lot right now with the memory shortage, so the exact numbers you see will shift. Always check the live price before you buy. And if that new 990 drops significantly in price down the road, it could become a reasonable budget pick. So this isn't forever, it's about today's pricing. I'll update you if that changes, because we don't guess here. Tell me in the comments what you're building and which drive you're leaning toward, because the right pick really does depend on your setup, and your take helps others decide too. I read every single one. Let me leave you with the bigger lesson that goes way past SSDs. The newest product with the biggest marketing push is not automatically the best one for you, and companies count on you assuming that it is. A few minutes of checking, exactly what we just did, is the difference between overpaying and buying smart on almost anything you shop for. And one more genuinely honest thought before we wrap, because it's bigger than these 4 drives. My whole job here only works if you trust me, and that trust means telling you to buy the cheaper, older thing just as readily as pointing you at something expensive. A channel that calls every new release a must-buy is a channel you eventually stop believing. I'd much rather be the one you check right before you spend, precisely because I'll happily tell you when the shiny new thing is the wrong call. That's the entire point of doing these the honest way. To sum it up, the 9100 Pro is for pros, the 990 Pro is the enthusiast sweet spot, the 990 Evo Plus is the value king most of you should buy, and the shiny new 990 is the one to walk past for now. Hyping the newest drive is easy. Telling you honestly to buy the older, cheaper one is harder. But that's exactly what you're here for, and that's exactly why I make these videos. That was the honest breakdown of all 4 Samsung SSDs. The 9100 Pro is the Gen 5 flagship for professionals. The 990 Pro is the discounted sweet spot for enthusiasts. The 990 Evo Plus is the value king for almost everyone. And the brand new 990, despite the marketing, is the one to skip until it gets cheaper. Newest doesn't mean best, and now you know exactly which drive fits your machine and your budget. So which one are you going with? Drop it in the comments, I read every single one. Links to all 4 are down in the description like always. If this helped you out, leave a like and subscribe to Premium Tech so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.